We're going to jump right in. When my parishioners found out that I was giving a lightning talk, they laughed in my face because I've never done anything quickly in my life, especially not preach a homily. But thankfully, I'm not preaching. I'm giving the last of these quick presentations. Happy to get started. My name is Father Spencer Howe. I'm a parish priest in Minneapolis. I am from St. Paul, but I'm in exile in Minneapolis. But they treat me pretty well there as well. I'm glad to have a little cohort or a little cadre of folks from the Twin Cities. More than just flyover country, we're glad to have the Twin Cities represented in force. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about St. Clement Church in Northeast Minneapolis. I'll see if I can get my PowerPoint presentation working. I think this is the second one I've ever done in my life, but talking a little about the seeds of urban Catholic revitalization. I'm going to really zoom in within my whole parish to one particular campus, which is St. Clement, but just to give a little relevant context. Location. Northeast Minneapolis is a unique place in the Twin Cities. It certainly is special for us, although there may be many, many neighborhoods like it in the nation. It's absolutely unique in the Twin Cities. There's a very strong sense of place, and you see a vivid expression of what immigrant faith did. Certainly the cities around America are impacted by that, but in a very small, relatively neighborhood, 9 Roman Rite churches, 3 Eastern Rite Catholic churches, and 2 Eastern Orthodox churches, not to mention several Protestant churches as well. Northeast is really, really desirable as a place to live. It has a small town feel in the city. It is very much a working class neighborhood, but with lots of new elements and new immigrant communities that are coming. It's also been dubbed the Northeast Minneapolis Arts District, and it was a way to repurpose a lot of warehouse space and made possible the coming of a lot of artist studios, hosts one of the largest open studio art crawl in the nation, which we've been able to participate in at St. Clement. Just a context at St. Clement Church, which was part of a parish merger which brought 4 churches together in 2013 under the name Holy Cross, a great banner to be under, a proud name on this campus, of course, with the Holy Cross Fathers. St. Clement was very likely a place that would close. We'll hear a little bit about that inevitability of a kind of coming to the end of life, but the new seeds of hope. In 2017, there were some new priests that were sent. I talk loud, so some people said we had a better sound system that was installed. It was just different priests using louder voices. But I was following, and I couldn't even fill one footprint of Father Earl the Pearl Simonson, who for 40 years poured his life out, laid his life down for this congregation. Of course, they say that people begin to look like their dogs after a certain amount of time. Parishes begin to resemble their priests, and that's a scary thought. And so Father Earl, I was so blessed to know him. He was a remarkable man, but of course the parish was aging around him. And in many ways, the parish's sense of a future was diminishing as he was coming to the end of his earthly life. 5 years ago, he did come to his eternal repose, and we couldn't even host his funeral at the parish. We hosted the vigil, and it was the most moving thing to carry him out for the very last time across the threshold of that church that he loved. The people, of course, I haven't been giving you the text. The people, of course, are the Clementines. They are incredibly loyal people, absolutely incredibly loyal people with warmth, with openness, and with humility. And that was one of the secrets we found about the fertility of the soil in that particular campus to see what would happen. St. Clement, by the way, is one of the only territorial churches in a sea of national churches that all had national identity, largely served the German and Irish. There's a window of Boniface, on the other side a window of Patrick, great signs of the English-speaking communities that worshiped in this church. But really one of the unique things about Northeast, especially when it came to the churches, there were new possibilities. There was willingness. There was an open playing field that I found now almost 8 years ago, and there has been gathering momentum, not only at St. Clement, but within the Holy Cross Parish as a whole. So indeed, there was a lot of atrophy. There was a sense of great decline. There was a sense of the glory in the past, but indeed there are some beginnings of some hope. I'm not going to tell a simple success story. Of course, there's no such thing in the church. I am going to tell about a story that's far from over, still unfolding. But when I arrived 8 years ago, there was that inevitable sense, especially at Clement, of decline. Even within our archdiocese, most people think that Clement was already closed years ago. So we're working against a kind of PR story that is rather difficult. Hope was in the past tense, a little bit like the way to Emmaus. We had hoped he would be the Messiah. Whenever hope is in the past tense, there is a feeling of despair and futility. But in the midst of that, there has been this new hope. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. I was referenced in my biography as a lover of Chesterton. Chesterton's Everlasting Man famously says, Christianity has died many times and yet has risen again, for it had a God who knew his way out of the grave. And I think that's part of the secret potency that we found at St. Clement. I've learned from a priest friend of mine about the 7 last words of the church. You may know these. They do settle in congregations all around the world. We have always done it this way. There needs to be something new. There needs to be something that hasn't perhaps been tried as of late. There certainly needs to be new vigor and new initiative. When I arrived, a friend in the neighborhood said St. Clement would make a perfect climbing gym. Of course, there's all sorts of repurposing of churches happening around the world, some much worse than climbing gyms. And I think as I come to this topic of reimagining and repurposing, renewal and revitalization, as I'm coming back to my second conference with the Church Properties Initiative, I'm thinking to myself, what about leaning into what the church actually does? So I told my friend, come back in maybe 10 years. We'll talk about the climbing gym, but I don't think we're going to need to turn it into a climbing gym. Let's try to live it as a church, to live it to the full and embrace that. Of course, there's a lot of need for creative repurposings, but I really want to emphasize in this brief lightning talk what it means to revitalize the church as a church. Greetings from Minneapolis to all of you. This is certainly the fruit of a process of dreaming and scheming and a lot of praying and working. Andrew Whaley's in the lower left corner. Andrew couldn't be here. He's been a presence. He's actually the one who told me about this conference the first time. He has a coffee apostolate and has worked with us in different ways, thinking about how to elevate our hospitality to become apostolic hospitality. He's been on site with us a few times in Northeast, and although Andrew couldn't be here, I wanted to kind of lift him up and thank him for his presence. I'm taking you a little bit on a site visit like you had an opportunity to do for those who went into South Bend today. So let's venture into this beautiful church of St. Clement. Of course, one of the key elements of any kind of freedom is a freedom to fail. That success isn't guaranteed. And one of the things that has become very, very clear is that you just have to get started. And we've done a lot of trial and error learning. There's certainly been a lot of discernment and gathering a team. We formed a team that's rather informal. In fact, there isn't a formal chair, but there's a kind of co-responsibility in a group that we've called the Revitalization team. It's remained informal, and we were talking about formalizing it, and one of my parishioners said, Father, it seems to be working. Let's just keep it going kind of as it is. So it's parallel to pastoral council, it's parallel to finance council, but it's very much focused on St. Clement campus and what's happening here in particular. There's been some basic intuitions. We've understood that we can become protagonists of renewal right where we are, and there's been a willingness to try that trial and error approach. Of course, with financial difficulties sometimes, there isn't maybe the freedom to try things, but we found a lot of things that don't cost any money at all to do, and there's a lot of things that we can take on where we are protagonists. Of course, we're the Holy Cross Parish as a whole, so we have to also learn from the cross. And one of the most profound things I could recommend any of you to read about failure is a little essay in a book called In the Likeness of Christ by Father Edward Lean called The Triumph of Failure, where he speaks about the cross and he speaks about this principle of experiencing failure to participate in the real fruitfulness of the grain falling to the ground and dying to bear real fruit. So let's get going here. I'm sharing some pictures along the way to give you a little bit of a feel of what the church is like. These are small signs, but they are, my brothers and sisters, substantial signs. There's been opportunities, a lot of it in preaching, but also in the ways that we've gathered the community to cast a vision of possibility, a vision that the church wasn't just opened in 1914 just to be closed down in 2024. This idea that there is a hope and possibility. This is a theme so present in the scriptures. I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans for your good. One of the most basic things, it doesn't cost $1, is connecting people, new and old, the value of knowing names, bridging the typical generational gaps. We've certainly had a huge influx of young adults, serious Catholics coming from places like the University of St. Thomas Catholic Studies. We certainly have Notre Dame alumni among our parishioners. It's a neighborhood that's filled with young professionals or young people that just are living in their church's basement or their parents' basement, claiming that they're professionals. But it's a great reminder, it is a great reminder that just connecting the community with itself begins to transform the possibility. I'm struck at how many times people were at the same masses for years upon years upon years without the simple opportunity to have that context, to say hello, and to come to share in a common possibility and prospect. We've been able to foster in a unique way at St. Clement because there weren't a lot of parish groups that owned everything, that had that sense of this is mine and not yours, that we've been able to really foster ownership and co-responsibility for the sacristy, for the church itself, for the hall downstairs, for the parking lot. In all sorts of unique ways, we've been able to help people to see that the church is theirs, that they can become agents of a kind of renewal. One of the keys has been setting attainable goals. Of course, the worst thing in the world is to set a goal that you can never make. But we set some goals around attendance and around collections, and we have been astounded at a more disciplined way of thinking. Not that we can always control collections, not that we can always control attendance, but there is an incredible passion when people have a goal and want to work towards it. We've had to sometimes adjust our timetables. There's been some really imminent need for patience, which is always part of the work of the apostolate. It's one of the reasons I'm not a fisherman, because it takes too much patience. But to be a fisher of men is a little more within my wavelength. Creativity. I'm going to share a few examples of that creativity, but again, the willingness to try and say yes to new ideas. I had a rector of the seminary when I was in college seminary who never was shy about saying yes. He knew that if it failed, it would be an experience for that seminarian that could be transformative for that seminarian's entire life. And that ability to say yes when somebody comes forward with an initiative, obviously to get the lawyers involved, obviously to think about all the necessary conversations we have to have, but to say yes, to take in those new ideas, to observe and to adjust and to learn as we go. And really, one of the things that I've had to do as a pastor is to pay attention to the momentum and passion of the people. I know some parishes don't seem to have much momentum, don't seem to have much passion, but even if there's a little bit of a rolling momentum in one direction, just feed that, nudge it along, encourage it, and you'll be astounded at what will happen. One of the things I've been most passionate about as a priest, as a basic starting point, is claiming the patronage of a parish. We have such a poor sense of what a patron really is, sometimes thinking about them as mascots, especially the neighboring parish. God forbid your mascot and their mascot, you'd get merged together and rolled into one. But if we see that the saints are the living examples, the saints possess this profound sense of unity, this great joy in the complementarity of their different lives. So to be able to claim St. Clement, to preach about St. Clement, to teach about St. Clement, to lift up St. Clement. We're going to have that statue restored in very short order as a great reminder that he is our living patron. On his feast day, we decorate him just like they decorate St. Peter's in Rome, decorating him with the cope and with we don't have a mitre for him to wear or a tiara for him to wear, so we just put a little beretta on his head as a great reminder that we cherish him. We seek his friendship and intercession. The great fourth pope who died in 100 AD, who gave us a letter that was on par with St. Paul's own letters and actually read in the liturgy in many Christian communities in the early church. A remarkable figure who was thrown into the Black Sea, drowned with the anchor. So the image of the anchor is a profound one, certainly of that stability, but also of that willingness to go to the watery grave. I'm going to say a little more about the ship in a moment. One of the guiding images we've had, there's a beautiful image of St. Clement at night. The stained glass windows are one of its great features, is this image of a dark world outside with weary travelers going by. And the church, if it's lit up at night, and we do a lot of evening gatherings and programming in the parish, it becomes a kind of lighthouse, doesn't it? It becomes a kind of lighthouse that shines those windows out as a gift to the world outside. For those weary travelers, think about the gift of the true meaning of Sunday, the rest that's required, the rest that we so long for, that we're looking for. We have, as Christians, as those who know the Lord, what others are longing for in the world. I've used that image a lot about radiating the light that's inside outward. We put a large Divine Mercy image. There's an apostolate out of Chicago putting Divine Mercy images on churches all around the world. They've done over 500. We put an 8-foot Divine Mercy image right on the back wall where the tabernacle is, as if to show that Christ is there. He's on the other side of the wall, but he's not just on the inside of the church. He wants to radiate out and be the Lord of the whole community. We had so much positive press just lifting up that image outside. Thankfully, it's higher than graffiti can reach. But also, the gentleman who's put those images in with his son, he said that to date there's never been vandalism of one of the images that they've installed. So a great reminder of our need to be courageous to lift up these sacred images, not only in the church, but outside. Showing signs of life, that's been really, really important. That for people passing by, they see activity. They see a change. They see more pride in how we're caretaking the landscaping, the curb appeal, all the rest. But just to show that sense, we've done a series of events that we use this tagline, St. Clement is open, as if to say we're not closed and we're not going to be closed. So come around and join us. In that sense of projecting a life and sharing that life with others. COVID threw us an opportunity to do parking lot masses. We did those for months, even beyond when we probably could have gone back in at St. Clement. But we kept doing that parking lot mass as just an opportunity to realize that Christ was in the city. And it's amazing how many neighbors we met. It's amazing how many people started gravitating back towards St. Clement as we came back into the church. Part of the image of what I'm offering, of course, is that we can't hide the light under a bushel basket, but we have to let it shine on the lampstand. We have to let it be an invitation because we have a duty to share with those who are outsiders and to help them to come in. Just another few examples of what we've done around celebrating the seasons and feasting with the church. There has been a focus on Sunday. One of the things, perhaps if I only said one thing my whole time, it's the unforeseen power of having one single Sunday Mass. Now that seems unexpected. It seems counterintuitive. I have 5 Sunday Masses at Holy Cross, including a Polish Mass and a very beautiful sung choral Mass, as well as a couple of Masses that are very, very simple Sunday Masses. But it's amazing how much people are members of Mass times more than they are members of parishes. But that one Mass at St. Clement has been an incredible incubator as people are getting to know each other's names, as people are discovering the gift of what it means, certainly to take on active roles within the liturgy, but not to promote activism, but certainly all of the things that make that Sunday Mass rich and beautiful, that opportunity to gather our energies and to see that the parish is a family of families. A lot of our growth is in young families. There's certainly some thriving parishes a little bit further out around us, but it's been beautiful to see some of the very families from that parish finding their way back. That's often something that happens. Families and life in the church does find a way, and I can't tell you how endeared, especially the old-timers, the Clementines are, as they discover how much love these newcomers have for the church of their heritage, the church of their families. Liturgically, we've been focused certainly on reverent liturgy, but also evangelistic and lively proclamation of the gospel. These two things must go together in the future of the church. The reverence, but also that spirit of joy and evangelism. Our investment in music, our investment in care of the environs. These have been really key things, not always requiring huge expenditures, but always saying yes to those opportunities for people to get a little more involved. We've also embraced a lot of traditions that were there. St. Clement always had a prized Christmas tradition of decorating the church. There was a family that had made a decision to move to another parish around the time I arrived. I don't think I had anything to do with them needing to leave, but they took all the decorations with them because that was a family that through the years had made that their thing. Beautiful tradition, for certainly, but it's hard to run a parish on some family's particular tradition. It's amazing to see how slowly, but also how steadily that Christmas tradition and the Easter tradition with it has come back alive. We have now 30 or 40 helpers to get the church put together, the so-called greening of the church. It's an absolutely astounding transformation where it was just a few people who used to do before and it was their thing to now something that's owned by the broader community. I can't tell you how encouraging that is as a pastor to know with such confidence that people are preparing not only the church, but their hearts for Christ's coming. Hospitality and really lifting up a very unique hall has been part of the secret. Yes, I am a donatist. I'm a great promoter of donuts after Mass. They do incentivize good behavior at Mass since at least 1847. I actually think the blessed bread that's shared at the end of the Orthodox Divine Liturgy is probably the origin of the Donut Sunday, to be able to go back into the world with a morsel that's sweet and blessed that sends you on your way. We've totally adjusted our sense of how we use the hall. It used to be a place waiting for the next funeral. lunch. And this is very common in halls. I loved our funeral ladies, but they owned the hall and they wouldn't let any other life happen in the hall. But it was amazing when we helped them to see, we're not going to host funeral lunches anymore at St. Clement. We can host them at one of our other 2 halls. We certainly do get a lot of requests. Many families increasingly are using some of the restaurants in the area for funeral lunches. But it's been absolutely freeing to think about the hall as a place where life can be lived. We've totally changed the layout. You can't see especially well in the picture that's there, but we've created, with proper furnishings and with a different layout, spaces for people to mingle, a lot more like your living room. The hall has almost been completely transformed. There's some tables in the center, but there's some sitting areas and library nooks on either side. And it's profound to see small groups and literary groups and poetry groups and all sorts of other little groups coming down to linger for a while. Most church halls, you want to get out as soon as you can. Now, there's amazing things that happen in church basements. Knights of Columbus were founded in a church basement. There's remarkable things that happen in parish halls. In our neighborhood, one of the most conclusive things that ever happened was the Federal Freeway project was blocked by a community meeting that started in the parish basement. And it's an amazing thing what Catholics can do, what people of faith can do, gathering as neighbors, gathering as citizens, gathering to be about that work. But we have some great improvements to do. Why is this venue so comfortable? There's a lot of attention to the furnishing of the space. There's a lot of attention to making sure that it's beautiful and attentive. This is Notre Dame, of course it's beautiful, but it's important that we would let the beauty of the churches that we cherish so much to flow into our social and community spaces as well. We have seen the hall become literally the center and hub of a weekly gathering that goes for hours after that 11:15 Sunday Mass. It is astounding. It is delightful to see that third space, that community space, so much a part of the life of our parish. In a very particular way, we've discerned a niche for our campus of St. Clement, which has really been around beauty in the arts. It's become a home for the arts, increasingly a home and harbor for artists. As we discerned that specific charism and niche for the St. Clement campus, we remembered that we were in this incredible neighborhood, which is the Arts District. So let's start with that. Let's begin to be interested in what the neighborhood around us is interested in. It's amazing how that connectivity has been so good. There is this world-class Art-A-Whirl weekend. It's the Open Studio Art Crawl, and it often coincides fittingly with Pentecost weekend. It's beautiful. We open up the church. We have a kind of church festival. The vestment display, I put out 30 or 40, some historic, some newer vestments, just as a way to highlight the beauty of those stained glass windows, to invite people in. And it's amazing how many people we come who are inquisitive, but also people who come back and people who are reconnecting. It's become that mini festival that's been part of our way to embody the way of beauty. These are just a few other ways. There's a lot of live music. We've started a monthly Northeast Catholic Underground event, which is the same event that the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal have been doing for many years now in New York City. It's a monthly event that really highlights the making of art. We have cake decorating and all sorts of culinary arts. There's the creative space opportunities. We do a wonderful Christmas octave variety show hosted by the Chesterton Society, which has been a wonderful tradition. You can see that on the right with some early music, a soprano and lutenist. We've done now a couple of plays, and we plan to do many, many more. This is one of the historical things I found out. St. Clement had a strong tradition of community theater for decades. And just to know that impelled me to say, let's reclaim it. Let's lift it back up. We're in partnership with a Catholic community theater in our Twin Cities area called the Open Window Theater, which is a remarkable apostolate. And it's been really fun to do smaller scale productions in a space which is made for theater. We don't have the curtains up anymore, but it's a great reminder. So his name is Michael, was last year. The sequel is Ain't You the One, which is coming up in November. The tickets are cheap if any of you want to come on to Minneapolis this November. The literary and poetry sessions, the community gatherings, the patronage of the arts. We have a number of artists in our employ as we're redecorating in small ways, as we're doing various things around the care of the statues. We've hosted and intend to host more of these artists' socials as well. I know our time is coming towards the break, but just a few more slides to get through. You can see me, the unbearded Father Howe, as I was there leading the charge to bring St. Joseph back into the church. He'd sat above the stairwell, and just small things like that, and doing it over a longer, extended period of time. It's really been remarkable how endeared and excited people are to be a part of this incremental change. Those men that are surrounding me are all parishioners, all very much a life of the parish, and it's been a wonderful thing and opportunity to be about those projects. We recently, just before Art World, we hung that crucifix from another church. It's a historic cross we had in our garage for a number of years. Eventually we had it restored, put a corpus on that cross, and hung from the arch, the triumphal arch that's there. That floating CFO or UFO flying saucer was an attempt at a baldachin. Unfortunately, all the lights within it didn't work, and it sort of cast a shadow on the altar. So I know we're winding down here as we're preparing for our break. Perhaps I'm just going to cut ahead just to this final invitation to realize this invitation to realize that we do have a fragility in our church. We do possess a treasure, and it's in earthen vessels. We know about what happens to old wineskins. There is a need for renewal of the skins, the buildings that we possess, but there's a fullness of life that we can live right now and begin to deepen. St. Paul says we possess the treasure in earthen vessels so that the transcendent power is seen as God's, not ours. We're not able to do this renewal, but we can open doors of possibility. We can believe in what we have at our heart as a church, as Christian communities that are capable of regenerating new life, inviting new life, baptizing new life, giving birth to new life. I'm always struck when a baby is brought to church for the first time. That's a life that did not exist before, and that's a life that will exist for all eternity. To unleash the power of our gospel around this neighborhood. You can see our 100-plus-year-old boiler there on the left, locomotive boiler. It's hanging on. I was eager about the geothermal conversation earlier today. But indeed, there's a lot of fragility in these churches that we love, in these churches that we delight in, and yet we pray that the Lord would give us the strength to know the resilience of the gospel. I'll conclude with this image of the old ship. It's a reminder, certainly, of the death of Clement as he was thrown off the ship. But we had an artist who does all the sets for that open window theater come and just create that mural, that seascape, that reminds us that, yes, there is stormy water. You can see even the sails of the ship are torn. The church has been through a lot in her 2,000 years, but the church presses on to a harbor, and we are given a great reason to rejoice. We've taken as our quote, as the world spins, the cross stands firm. That's a truth, a spiritual truth for our whole parish, but at St. Clement, it's giving us a confidence that even as that church building and that parish since 1902 has stood the test of time, it hasn't done so automatically, but by a real principle of development and rediscovery and new beginnings and new resurrections. So as we pray at the end, certainly invite you to come and visit, but we also ask the Lord to send forth his Spirit to renew the face of the earth. It's a great joy to be able to bring little signs, little seeds of hope, and to remind us all that we can bring those seeds into the communities that we so love and cherish. Thank you for your attention and for your presence.